In our last video, we left off on the east side of the 200 block of Huron Avenue with this store right here next to the old Valentine building. And we saw over the year it was Advanced Care Pharmacy and Arden's, Woolworths. But there's one other store that we didn't look at in our last video, and that was a Goulding company. It's J.W. Goulding to be exact. And here we have a picture of him as the owner, and it appears that this C.E. Barrett is the manager. This is a souvenir booklet from 1904, and it tells a little bit about the store. And it says that this store is 200 feet long and 30 feet wide, contains almost an endless variety of goods. The first department on the right is optical goods, silverware, and jewelry. Then fancy goods, clocks, art pieces, and notions. The left of the entrance greets you with fancy holiday books, novels, belts, pocketbooks, perfumes, face powders, leading makes and corsets, and ladies' and gentlemen's hosiery and underwear. A row of tables in the center contains numerous bargains in fancy china and hundreds of other novelties. The millinery department in the center is a beautiful sight at this season. And it appears that this is what is a picture of here at the millinery department. The building just to the north of the building that we've been looking at is Lynch's Irish Tavern today. In 2009 it looked like this, Hollister's Nightclub and Cafe. Before that it was the Sports Shop. Previously the Sports Shop had been in the 300 block of Huron Avenue right next to Firestone, but when all those buildings were torn down they moved over here. If you recall in our last video, I told you that the store next to Valentine's at one time was a True Value store. And here you see a picture of it. And then you also see the Jane Lee store next to it. And then where Lynch's is today, the store that we're looking at now, you see it was divided into two stores. On the right you had Noble Shoe Store, and on the left you had Peck's Drug Store. Peck's had been located further north on this block, and then they relocated here. In the late 1800s all the way into the 1930s, this location had a store by the name of Higgers, Al Higgers, and later on Al Higgers and Sons. In this photo you can just make out the signage in the store where it says Al Higger and Son. And then as you go up, take a look at this roof line, pretty fancy on top, which is no longer there. In this aerial view taken from one of the rooftops, you're looking across Huron Avenue and you're looking right at this building now, and you can see the signage a little clearer, Al Higger and Sons. And also on the three awnings, they have writing, which is kind of surprising because I don't think you could see the writing from the streets, but maybe you could from across the street. The awning on the left says hats and shoes, the middle one says clothing, but I can't quite make out what that right one says. Just north of where Lynch's is in 213 is a building that you see with the balcony there. I have three pictures of this building. Notice in this picture it has no shutters and the windows are rectangle. In this next picture you'll see that the windows are rectangle, but they also have shutters. This was Razel's Shoes, a pretty nice looking building. This next picture isn't a very good picture of the building, but you can see the three windows and they have rounded tops now. And at this time it was United Shirt Store. In 1904 you can see the building that was next to Al Higgers and Son. And this belonged to Fraser Clothiers. They carried a full line of clothing and men's furnishings. And on the awning you can just make out Fraser Clothing. The next building north is a very distinctive building, mainly because of the windows on it. When they remodeled this and put the new facade, they put in new windows. It was quite a distinctive looking store. In 2009 here it appears to be vacated. Most people of my generation and previous generations, because it's been around for a long time, remember it as Winkelman's, a very nice women's clothing store. In the 1924 directory, it was listed as Rosenthal Winkelman Store. But after that, all the way up until 1961 directory, which is the latest one I have, it's just listed as Winkelman's. In this photo here, if you look closely, you can see what the building looked like before they changed the windows. They basically used the same framework or where the windows were, because they had two sets of windows on this building, one over the other, and what they did, they just took out the whole thing and made one great big window. But it's quite unique here how these windows were shaped, a little different than the rest of the buildings on the block. During this time period, it was owned by Mr. Wolf, and it was listed under Bizarre Goods, so it was probably very similar to a 5 and 10 cent store, carried a little bit of everything. In this postcard of the east side of the block, you can see this building underneath the arrow. And the top windows look normal pretty much, except it has like a little awning over it. But the bottom windows look like they're a bay window of some sort, just a little different. Here's another view of that top window, and in this picture it looks like it could have been a bay window on top as well as the bottom. Of course, we can't see the bottom one in this picture. You'll have to forgive me if I spend a little time looking at the architecture of these buildings, because to be honest with you, that it really interests me. I find the architecture of the different buildings throughout the years fascinating, and I know some of you share my interest in that. Next, we come to the building just to the left of where the Winkelman building was, and this is another vacancy in 2009. That's 3 in a row. 2009 must have been a bad year for business. But in 1982, the building looked like this. I can't quite make out the name of it, and since it's 1982 and I don't have directories for that year, but it does look like it's a wedding dress shop of some sort. You can see in the windows up above, where it looks like there's wedding dresses displayed. Also note that there's openings for 4 windows there, but the top 2 have been blocked off, just the bottom 2 are open. But in this picture you'll see that all 4 windows are blocked off, and that's when Noble Shoes was there. Before Noble's, R&S shoe store was there. I remember that well. I went in with my dad to get fitted for shoes. They had something very unique there. They had an x-ray machine for your feet. They just turned it on, you stuck your feet in there, you looked at the x-ray, and they could tell you if your toes were cramped or if you had enough room. And this is actually what your feet looked like. It had a green glow to it. Kind of scary now that you think of it. Of course, no one realized the dangers of open x-rays at that time. And once they did, the machines disappeared. Most machines had 3 viewers to view your feet. One, of course, for the person that stood up there and wanted to see their own feet. The other one for the salesman. And then there was a third one that if it was a child or something and the parent wanted to see all 3 if you could see it at the same time. And my friends tell me there were a couple more stores that had these machines as well. In the early 1900s, there was another shoe store there by the name of Henson and Brannigan. Shoes and furnishings and such. The first picture, we saw that only the bottom 2 windows were open. Then we saw them all closed up, and in this picture here, you can see all 4 windows. These would be the windows there on the left. There was another business that was on this side of the block between Butler and Quay, and that's James Howard and Company, Furniture Company. And I don't have the exact address on it, but we do know it was on this side of the street in this block between Butler and Quay. This is the same furniture company as shown in this insert, Howard Furniture, just north of the City Hall. So I can't show you a picture or anything, but I thought this advertisement was quite unique, and so I thought I would share it with you. Not only did they sell all kinds of furniture, mattresses and spring beds, but they also sold coffins and coffin trimmings. Can you imagine going in there for a bed and salesman saying, "Say, these are great beds, but if you want a really good deep sleep, let me show you here on the right these wonderful coffins that we have." It kind of tickles me. Alright, let's look at the next building going north. That's this building right here. One of my favorites. I love the facade on this and the way the windows curve. It's just a wonderfully designed building, I think. I'm so glad it was never covered with a false facade on the front. This is what it looked like in 2009. In 1982, this is what it looked like here. It was occupied by Ortenberger's leather goods, which carried purses and luggage and so forth. For those of you that know your history, you remember that originally it was on Military Street, and you remember the white horse that was always above it, as you can see in this insert. From the late 20s to, well, through the 60s at least, it was occupied by Diana Hughes, a ladies' clothing store. Notice the second story windows are now covered up. In this time period here, it was occupied by the Cochran dry goods store. It looks like Cochran dry goods carried a little bit of everything here. This is the front of the Cochran dry goods store here. I love this picture here. It gives you so much detail, and we'll look at all these stores in a moment. But you can see on the far right, the Cochran dry goods store, at least part of it. You see the large unique windows there on the right. And then you see, part of the display windows down below. The other thing I like about this photo, it gives you a flavor for that time period with these carts out front and the people. The next door going north is this door here, the proper framing gallery, at least it was in 2009. In the early 1980s, it was the L.G. Haig store. As you can see here, they had beautiful shoes. In the 50s and 60s, this is the shoe store that I remember downtown, Fife Shoes. It seems this building was mostly a shoe store during its history, first L.G. Haig and then Fife's, and also before that McElroy's shoe store, which you see here. It doesn't matter what year it is, it's always fun to look in the windows of stores. In this picture you see the entrance is clear, but in the next picture you'll see a shoe display right in the middle of the entrance out near the sidewalk. They must have added that later. People don't come in to look at your window displays, and you put your display where the people are. People almost trip over it in the sidewalk. And it would appear that this is the Christmas season, according to the decorations on the window. Here's another photo again, and here we can see the McElroy shoe store quite clearly, with the signage right there. And also we see the display case they had in the center entrance to the store as well. But this building wasn't always a shoe store. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, it was a Welch jewelry store here. The owner was Robert Welch. In our next video, we'll finish up on this side of Huron Avenue and go across the street to the west side.